Language serves several important functions in our lives. First, we know that language is expressive. Language allows us to do things like ask questions, describe people, things, and ideas. It allows us to inform, persuade, and entertain others, and it allows us to form personal relationships. In addition, language allows us to express observations, thoughts, feelings, and needs. So when we are expressing observations, we are reporting on that sensory information that we are taking in or have taken in. And these observations are descriptive rather than evaluative. When we are expressing thoughts, however, we are drawing conclusions based on what we have experienced, and these thoughts are connected to our beliefs and our attitudes and our values. When we express feelings, we are communicating our emotions, and there are often several social norms about how, why, when, and where, and to whom we can express these emotions. But emotion sharing is a really important part of how we create social bonds and empathize with others. And finally, in this expression category, language allows us to express our needs. So language is a really instrumental way to help us just get things done on a day-to-day basis. Another function language serves is that language is powerful. So language gives us the ability to express our identities. We can use verbal communication to strategically create a desired impression. And the power of language to express our identities varies depending on the identity that we want to express, as well as to whom and the context. But language gives us that ability to express ourselves. And in addition, language is powerful because it affects our credibility. People often make assumptions about our credibility based on the ways that we speak and what we say. And so we have to make sure that we are using language clearly and that we are accountable for what we say so that we can be seen as being trustworthy. And then finally, language can be used as a means of control. Now, oftentimes the word control has really negative connotations, but control can have positive, neutral, or negative meanings. So we can use our language to reward and punish others. We can use positive reinforcement to praise and negative reinforcement to stop behaviors that we don't want. We can withhold communication, but ultimately the way that we talk creates an overall climate of communication within a relationship that also has elements of control embedded in it. So verbal communication can be controlling and deceitful, which can lead to really bad communication climates. Or verbal communication can be empathetic and understanding and create really positive communication climates. Another function of language is that language is performative. So language allows us to commit to a course of action. It allows us to make a promise. And language is so much more than just mere words. Language can actually mean a lot. For example, the things that judges and juries decide in court cases set precedents for the ways that laws will be interpreted in the future. And so what is said today of one case could be potentially used to absolve somebody of a crime later on. And so language gives us the ability to make those promises and to commit to a specific course of action. And language can do a lot of damage as well. In addition, language is also fun. So word games, for example, have been popular for ages. The game of Scrabble has been around for decades, and so have TV shows like Wheel of Fortune, right? And so writers and poets and comedians have built their careers on their ability to have fun with language and to subvert the audience's expectations of the ways that they are using language. So humor is a really cool phenomenon because it's largely based on the relationship between language and meaning, and the comedian's ability to play with your expectations of what that language means. So language can also be a lot of fun. In addition, another function of language is that language is dynamic. And what I mean by that is that it is ever changing, and language is essentially limitless, right? Aside from just the fact that we can put words together in almost infinite number of ways, words also change meaning, and new words are created all the time. And we call these neologisms. Neologisms are newly coined or used words. And there's lots of different kinds of new words that we make all the time. English has often been called the vacuum cleaner of languages because we steal and borrow from so many other languages. For example, we stole the word chic from the French and the word caravan from the Arabic. But in addition, we also create new words all the time. So we have compound words that create a new word by combining two already known words. For example, a keyboard, which was a board full of keys, right? Or a newspaper, which was a paper that had the news on it. And so those words were created at one point in order to describe something. In addition, we can create new words by adding something or subtracting something or blending things together. So, for example, we can add prefixes and suffixes to words to change them. So a husband is different from an ex-husband, right? Simply because we added that prefix to it. We can subtract information from a word and have it still retain its meaning. So, for example, an examination is the same thing as an exam, even though it's a different word, right? We just took off the last half of the word, give or take, but it still means the same thing. And in addition, we can blend old words together to create new ones. For example, if we have a meal that is between breakfast and lunch, we often call it brunch. And so we create these new words all the time. And existing words also change their use and meaning all the time. So, for example, the word friend is no longer just a person, but it's also an action now. Same thing with Google, right? When you friend someone on Facebook, that's a verb now. And Google used to just be a website, and you used to search for things on Google, but now we just Google it, right? And so words are changing all of the time. And this also brings us to the idea of slang. Slang refers to new words or adapted words that are specific to a group, a context, and or a time period. And oftentimes slang is regarded as being less formal, but it's very representative of the fact that we like to be creative with our language and we like to play with our language. And again, there's lots of different types of slang that we might encounter as well. One type of slang is inversion, right? So this is a type of wordplay that produces slang words. So when we invert a word, we're taking words like sick or bad, which generally have a negative connotation, right? If you're sick, you're not feeling well. If you're bad, that means that you are not good, right? But in slang terms, we can say that something is sick, right? Or something is bad. And that changes the meaning based on the context, right? So we are inverting these words and making what was a negative connotation now they are referring to the opposite of their typical meaning, right? Now it's a good thing. Similarly with reduction. And this is similar to when we were clipping words earlier, right? So reduction, we can say, hey, let's take a pic together, or hey, I'll talk to you in a sec, right? So we could take a picture together, a pic, and I'll see you in a second, a sec, right? So we are creating these new words. And slang words also are often referring to illegal or socially taboo topics. And these allow people who are in the know, it allows them to be able to break the code and to be able to understand what is being discussed here. And it intentionally leaves out people who are not in the know and who don't know those terms. So slang also can serve that function. So as you can see, language is super dynamic and it's changing all the time. And finally, the last function of language is that language is relational. So we use verbal communication to initiate, maintain our relationships, and so language can really bring us together. Words like you, we, I, our, and us all impact our relationships. So for example, when we use we language like we and our and us, this can be used to promote a feeling of inclusiveness, right? To help bring people closer together. Whereas when we use I language, this can often separate people. I and you language specifically, because I language, it can be really useful because it allows us to express our own thoughts and our needs and our feelings, and it also allows us to own those expressions. But you language can lead people to become defensive and feeling attacked, right? You did this, you always do that sort of language, which can also be really divisive and can lead to feelings of separation, which could then potentially lead to a termination of our interpersonal relationships. So ultimately, language can bring us together, but it can separate us as well. Whether it's criticism or teasing or language differences, verbal communication can create these feelings of separation, right? You see in the comic here that one cave person says to the other, we need to talk, and the other one says, uh-oh, right? So language is super relational in that way because it helps us to not only initiate and maintain our relationships, but it also can help us to terminate those relationships. So as you can see, language serves a number of important functions in our lives, and it's important for us to recognize those functions so that we can recognize the impact that language has in our lives and our relationships.